How do you turn the raw energy of a protest into lasting, powerful change? It's maybe the most important question of our time, right? Well, today we're going to break down the playbook for how you actually do it.
I mean, there's no doubt about it. We are absolutely living in an age of protest. You see it everywhere, on college campuses, in city squares. It feels like the main way people demand change. And look, a powerful protest can be a game changer. It can launch an issue right onto the national stage, get everyone talking. But what happens after the signs go down and everyone goes home?
And that really gets us to the heart of it. A protest can be the spark, for sure. But is that spark enough to build a real fire? You know, the kind of fire that creates lasting change.
Just think about the Arab Spring. I mean, citizen protesters did something that seemed impossible. They actually toppled dictators. But then what happened? In that power vacuum, the most organized groups, and yeah, often the most militant ones, they're the ones who swept in and took over. It's such a tough lesson, but it's a crucial one. Getting rid of something bad isn't the same as building something better.
So first, let's really set the stage and talk about this reality we're in, the age of protest.
And from there, we'll dive into that critical next step, how you get from protest to actual power.
Okay, so here's our roadmap. We'll start by digging into this age of protest. Then we'll tackle that huge jump from protest to power. The real meat of this is going to be the 3 strategies for change. We'll spend a good bit of time there. And we'll wrap up by talking about what it all really requires, the citizens' work.
All right, so what's the actual playbook here? How do you do it? Let's jump right into 3 key strategies for real, lasting change.
Okay, here they are, the big 3. First, expand the frame of the possible. Second, choose a defining fight. And third, find an early win. You can almost think of it like a cycle, right? You dream bigger, you focus that dream into a specific fight, and then you build momentum to keep it all going.
So this first step is all about shattering our own mental limits. You know the biggest roadblock to big change? It's that little voice, or maybe someone else's voice that says, "Oh, that's just never going to happen." Expanding the frame means you call that out. You challenge it. You start the whole conversation with a really simple but incredibly powerful question. Yeah, but what if it could happen? And look, this is not a left or right thing. This works no matter what you believe. Expanding the frame might mean asking, what if we had a radically smaller national government? Or from a totally different perspective, what if we had a huge single-payer healthcare system for everybody? It's about giving yourself permission to imagine a completely different world, and then making that the starting point for the debate.
Okay, strategy number 2. Choose a defining fight. All politics, at its core, is about creating contrast. It's this versus that. And a defining fight isn't about getting nasty or being uncivil. It's about picking one single symbolic issue that acts like a lightning rod, an issue that makes it absolutely crystal clear what you stand for and what you're trying to change.
And honestly, there's probably no better modern example of this than the fight for $15.
Now, the activists behind this, they weren't saying that $15 an hour would magically solve all economic inequality. Of course not. But by picking that one ambitious, super specific goal, they drew a line in the sand. They forced a massive, nationwide debate about what a fair wage even is. Who gets to prosper in our economy? And just look at what they did. In that one move, they expanded the frame of what people thought was possible, and they picked an incredibly powerful defining fight. Brilliant.
All right, on to strategy number 3, and this one is all about momentum. Find an early win. It's so true that success breeds success, right? Getting a smaller, achievable victory creates this amazing feedback loop. It's proof that what you're doing is working, that change is actually possible. And that, in turn, inspires way more people to get off the sidelines and join in.
For a great historical example, just look at the Solidarity movement in Poland. You know, it didn't start with some grand sweeping plan to bring down the whole government. No way. It started with these small strikes at a shipyard back in 1980, and they managed to win some minor concessions. But that one small early win, it was like a proof of concept. It showed it could be done. And that tiny victory fueled a whole decade of momentum that just grew and grew until it helped bring down the entire communist regime. That's the power of an early win.
And that brings us to our last section, which is maybe the most important part, the citizens' work. This is all about what happens next. You know, after the protest signs are put away and the really, really hard work of building power actually begins.
And let's just be real for a second. Lobbying politicians, trying to shift the narrative in the media, talking to your skeptical neighbors one by one, none of that stuff has the big, dramatic, sexy feel of a massive protest march.
But that stuff, that is how change has always been made.
It's not about one big, flashy moment of triumph. It's about the slow, steady, dedicated work that comes after.
This long, slow slog, that's the hidden engine behind some of the greatest victories in history. Think about the U.S. Civil Rights Movement, or Indian independence, or Czech self-determination. None of those were single moments. They were the result of decades of persistent, unglamorous, day-in, day-out work by ordinary citizens.
So, let's just run through that playbook one more time. If you want to turn protest into real, durable power, what do you do? 1. Expand the frame, think bigger than what they tell you is possible. 2. Pick a defining fight that makes the stakes crystal clear. And 3. Secure an early win to build that crucial momentum you're going to need for the long haul.
So, in the end, the protest is the spark, but it's the showing up afterward that's the real work. And you don't need to be a politician or have some fancy title to do it. You just have to be willing to participate. And that's really the most empowering truth of all, isn't it? That you can be a co-creator of whatever comes next.